Hello and welcome to the second part of the session for the Arctic mining station environment. As always, before we get things started, everything that I'm about to say is based on my experience, my opinions. So there can be many ways of doing these things. That's just the way I do it. So with that said, let's get things started. So, last time we worked on this scene here and tried to clean things up, set light map resolutions, and trying to just get a good base for the scene. I went into this scene without recording just to go through some of the light map settings again because I just wanted to optimize it a little bit and so on. So it's nothing major, but it was just quite time consuming to just double check all of that stuff, which is the reason I didn't record it. So yeah, not really any big changes. So but what I noticed is that I actually forgot to turn off several things the last time to actually get a clean base to work with. So we need to fix that and have a look at some of these things again and just make sure that we really have a clean base. That happened because, when I get these scenes, I don't always know where exactly which settings have been made. So sometimes it can potentially be that I forget to reset something or that I forgot to check if this or that is actually being used. So I just noticed, for example, that I just went in and had a look at the eye adaptation. I actually forgot to check all the stuff up here, which is a little bit stupid. But as you can see, we have quite a lot of things in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reset them all. We also have a color grading enabled here, which you can see has quite a significant impact. So when I turn it off, we get something that looks very blue. Which is actually interesting because we can also argue that why are we making the scene so blue, and then we basically compensate for that with a lookup texture and change the values to something quite different again. So I would actually argue that why even make this if we want to get this in the end. So we can actually just turn all of that stuff off and just try to get some proper base settings. So I'm just going to reset all of them, and you can see, did you see that when I let's undo that. So this is how dark it is right now, and when I remove the gamma tweak here, or the gain tweak, was it, I think? Nope. Yeah, the gamma tweak, you can see we get a lot of values back. Now I remove the gain and then we get this. So I think here was something as well. So you can see that we actually lost quite a lot of values because of the strong post that has been applied. So now stuff is a lot more visible and we have a lot less super dark spots, which is important because otherwise if we work with this grading already applied, we're sitting here looking at this stuff and we're like, oh man, is that dark? Why is it so dark? And then you crank up the light values, but instead it's the post that just destroys all your values. So I'm just gonna quickly go through this and just double check. Look at this stuff here. So we got this slope tweak and the shoulder. So that is the default look here. We can do all these things, but as you can see, we lose a lot of contrast in the way. So what I think what we should do is we should work with those default settings first, and then try to basically go from there. And if we adjust the slope slightly. That's cool. Because yeah, we should just like take care of the base stuff first, and then we should go in here. So I'm just quickly gonna check this view again. You might have also noticed I turned off this light here, this red light. The thing is, it's an animated light. So when we is it simulate? Yeah. So when we do this, whoops, sorry, spotlight. Boop. So when we do this, we get this moving light actually. The problem, however, is that in this state, it looks like this. So we basically, while working with the map, we constantly get like this feeling of, okay, so it actually looks like this here, but it doesn't. So I just decided to turn that light off for now. So we actually see what this stuff here looks like when the light just points into a different direction. So I think this helps us. It's a bit more accurate for working with that stuff. So what I also want to do is I want to hide all the fog sheets, because I think they don't really help us to see what's going on here. So we just search for fog, and we have these 3 fog sheets here, and we could just hide them like this. So that's actually pretty cool as well, that we have like these little holes up in here, where we need to see how far we get with those. So so one of our main goals actually is to get more light from here to actually go into the cave, go in here, and help us illuminate all that stuff. What we also should do is we should kind of like make sure that not only our setup is kind of correct, but also that our values are correct. Remember when we looked at the other scene, we had some fairly difficult values color-wise for the materials to work with. So we can just double check using the base color. And that stuff here looks perfect. I mean, some things are very dark, which I would say like, yeah, maybe we should brighten those up. But I'm always a little bit like, yeah, cables, you know. It's okay. I don't bother too much. What I'm more concerned about is stuff like this. But if I look at these values here, that actually looks reasonable. We could argue that this looks maybe a tiny little bit too dark. So what we can do is we can open up the material here, and so just have a look. So we got like the tint mask, and we got the albedo overlay here. So the first thing that I would like to do is maybe just desaturate the value a bit, kind of like this, maybe desaturate it a bit more, and whoop, let's look at this texture, and I think we're gonna make it a little bit brighter as well. Yeah, something like this, I guess. So I think this looks already better value-wise. So now what we can see is we actually, Sasha told me that when we just had a quick conversation about the scene, is he actually wanted these to be rocks, and then he just started fooling around with it, and while doing so he was like, hey, maybe it would be really cool to have those as actually like ice. So what we can see here is like those values, they're fairly extreme. So what we should do is we should actually brighten that up and bring it more into, you can see like the contrast between those is like very huge. And if this is supposed to be ice, you would never have those dark values. So what we need to do here is we just grab one of these, and we open up the material. So we have a tint color here, but we also have this texture here, which is very contrasty. If you look at it, it's whoops, it's a very very contrasty texture. So there's many ways of actually fixing that. We could go in here again and adjust some curves, but what we also can do is we can just go into this master material here, and I actually prepared that already. So we could basically take this texture was going into here and then being multiplied by this color. But what we can do is we can just plug this into an alpha of the lerp, and now A is the black values and B is the white values. And what we can do is we can just choose B and say 0.5, which basically lifts all the black values up. So if I hit apply, you can see what that did. It just like lowered the contrast of that texture and made everything that was black before is now 0.5. So that's already a lot better. What we can also do is we can go into the tint color and brighten that one up. So if we look at this, I think this looks better. I mean, it's still quite far from being very accurate, but I think that these icy rocks, they should be brighter than all the metal stuff. So that's kind of like good already. This will also help us with baking, because the darker the diffuse values of our objects are, the more they're gonna absorb the light. Which is one of the reasons why I'm constantly saying that we shouldn't have too dark diffuse values, because then they just absorb all the lights, and then it can get very very tricky to get some nice bounce lighting in your scene. So we have that stuff. So that's kind of alright. I also want to talk a bit about all the other lights that we're going to add. So this light here, it will get a, let's call it a special treatment. And I will show that to you once we have another test bake for that stuff done. Because subsurface materials, the way they react to certain types of light and shadow baking, it's a little bit tricky. So we kind of have to pull out some tricks to make that work nicely. What's also very important to know is that this is a cave, right? And we're using light mask to build all the lighting for the cave. And whoops, let me just get this here. And so what the problem is with light mass in situations like this is light mass is sending out rays, and it scatters them around quite a lot. And if you have like this little entrance here for that cave, sometimes it's hard for light mass to kind of like see the hole and just shoot tons of rays into the hole to actually make the stuff in here nice. There have been several techniques by people trying to fix that. For example, you might know a guy called Kula. He did some very very nice lighting stuff on the Unreal forums, and what he did was he just like added a white plane here that was hidden in game, and then he put a spotlight with quite some strong intensity towards that plane, and then the bounce light from that plane was actually going into his rooms and like doing some really nice and soft lighting. The cool thing is it's not really needed anymore because we have a new feature. So if we go into our toolbox here and we type portal, we get the light mask portal. And the light mask portal is kind of similar to what people might know from like offline renderers like V-Ray or others like that, where you have like portal lights. And portal lights, they are basically like you add them to windows, and then it kind of like simulates the light from the sky and everything coming through that window. But they're actually like light sources. The lightmass portal is not a light source. It's an entity that tells lightmass to shoot more rays into that specific direction, basically. So what we can do is we can just like get this portal here. So that's what it looks like. And it basically just shoots more rays inside of this area. So what we can do is we can just scale that thing up. And make this kind of portal here at the entrance of our cave so that we shoot more rays into here. I think what could also be cool to try out would be to actually add a portal in here as well. So zoop. Scale it up a bit. Alright. So now we got these two portals telling us that, or telling lightmass, hey, shoot some more rays here. Okay. Then another thing that we can do, or, well, yeah, I think we should just maybe rebake that stuff now that we changed so many settings here. Okay. So what I want to do as well is, so we have the skylight and we have the directional light. Right now the directional light is not really facing towards this cave entrance. So what I actually did here is like I turned it off for now, and I will use the skylight and crank up the intensity here quite a bit. And what I want to do is I just want to bake this with the skylight right now to kind of like get a feel for how much of the sky I do get like in here. And then we can add in the sunlight again, but we kind of like need to sometimes build these components isolated to actually see how much they affect stuff. So we can do this in multiple ways. We can crank up the intensity, so the default is 1, so you can see it looks like this. We can crank this up to 5, or we can keep it at 1, and we can boost the indirect lighting contribution. So what I would like to try now is like keep the intensity of 1 and increase the indirect lighting intensity to 3. I want to go to my world settings, and I want to increase the number of indirect lighting bounces, that's what it's called, to 100. And that should help us getting more rays into the cave, right? Because this is still super, super dark. So I'm gonna go to lighting only for this. And let's see what we get from this. So I'm gonna save all of that. And we go with preview, and we're gonna build the lighting. Something else that I wanted to touch, and it might actually be a good moment doing so while baking, if we, yeah, oops, wrong one. If we take these ice rocks and we look at this, I think we should optimize this shader a bit. So if we look at this, we can see that there is no kind of like thickness to the object. So basically the light is coming from behind now, and you can see that no matter where I go with my camera, the light is always basically fully penetrating or crossing this surface. And we should actually get some more thickness information in here. So this kind of like looks fairly wrong. So what I would like to do is I would actually like to have a look at this shader. And there's quite some fancy stuff in here. So the first thing that I like to do is clean up. So now all the stuff that's not hooked up is gone, which makes it so much more easy to see what we're actually doing here. So let's try to keep this a little bit organized here. So light building will take a little bit longer now, even on preview, because there is one huge rock that is the floor piece here, and I actually cranked the light map resolution up quite a bit for that rock. Maybe I'm gonna reduce it again because it's a little bit annoying if it takes super long. But let's see. I just was not really happy with the quality of the baked shadows and stuff last time, so I increased the resolution. But we need to see how we want to keep that. So that's the one. So now what we kind of like need to do is we need to figure out what is this shader actually doing. So we got like this funny texture here. Let's have a look what it is. So we have this one. I don't know what that looks like. This one seems to be the same but inverted. And then we have some nice ambient occlusion here. Sweet. Okay. So we use this here, roughness intensity goes in here. Okay. I think, where do we have those set up? Yeah, I think it would be cool to actually have some variations on the roughness. So I think I'm actually gonna rework this setup a little bit. So we don't really need any metallic stuff hooked up here. I'm just gonna delete that because we don't need it, and it just kind of like gets confusing. So the interesting stuff though is the stuff down here where we have all the subsurface things. So what I want to do is I want to explain a little bit how certain subsurface things work. So for that I just unhooked emissive completely, and we have this texture here, which kind of looks like it's the same texture as the AO. I think this actually might be the AO texture. Let's have a look here. Okay. Okay, so I think one is the AO and one is some kind of like thickness map that has been baked that can potentially be... Yeah. Alright. That's fine. So, first of all, what I like to do is I like to kind of like use the base color inputs for Subsurface as well. It doesn't really matter so much, but I kind of like to combine the two. So, however, the first thing that I would like to do is like let's just remove all of that stuff to make it less confusing. Okay, normal subsurface. So what I think what we should do is we should basically start clean, so I can just illustrate some of the things. So let's make a parameter for the opacity. By the way, it's also taking longer to build now because of the light mass portals, because of the when it tries to focus the rays for the baking, it's just a little bit more expensive to figure out where to shoot stuff, which is the reason why that also takes longer. So we're going to use opacity for now, and we're going to use subsurface color. And we're going to save that. All right. So now what we need to do is we just need to look in here. So a tint color, a subsurface color, blah, 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 and opacity. All right. So now it looks like this, right? So we get like this material definition, which is from the default behavior of the shader. And now we get our subsurface effect, which is fully there, right? Because there is nothing else. It's just the subsurface color plugged into the subsurface slot. Let's get away with the grid. And the only other thing that is hooked up now is the opacity. So first, let's look at what opacity does. So if we increase this value, it obviously gets darker. However, do you see what happens here? That we still get some subsurface around these edges here. So what the opacity does, it's the thickness threshold of the object. So basically, now that I have this value, it's kind of like it's the threshold of how thick does the object need to be so we still get some subsurface. So now here we get basically full subsurface, but here in the center, you can see here we do get some subsurface as well, and that is because the object is fairly thin here. However, on this side, here it's a lot thicker. If we look from here, you can see we got this thick stuff and this thick stuff, and here it's a lot thinner. So basically we do get more subsurface effect here, right? So having it like this is actually already a lot more realistic because we kind of like block the lights from these parts where the object is not as thick. So what we can do is we can allow a tiny little bit more, kind of like this. And now what we can see here is that all these changes on the surface here, they have absolutely no influence on the subsurface, and it kind of like doesn't really look that good. So what we need to do to fix that actually is we need more information for the subsurface color. So what we're going to do is we, was it the green channel? Yes, it was the green channel. So what we will do is we will actually, let's do something like this. So we have our subsurface color, and now we're gonna multiply our subsurface color by our subsurface mask. So what we will get from this is this here. So kind of like where we have these occluded or thicker parts or these changes in geometry, we get different subsurface colors. And that really, really helps to push the details of the subsurface effect. Well, at least when the shaders are compiled. So it's already a little bit better, but it's not yet fully there. So oh, I'm stupid. I didn't hook it up. I was like, yeah, this is not yet strong enough. We should see it definitely a lot stronger. So let's have a look again. Sorry. So now you can see this looks a lot more defined. You see that? It doesn't just like bleed through the whole thing anymore. So now we actually get a lot more variety in our effect of subsurface scattering. Like, look at this. This looks like this can already be more, it already feels more icy. So that is actually pretty sweet already. So I think this is quite better. There's many more ways we can do even more stuff. So what you can, for example, do is you can have this opacity value that we set here, and you can basically, to this opacity value, you can also hook up additionally a mask to get even more control over the volumes of that stuff. So that's actually really nice. Gonna delete that stuff here for now. Alright. And what's also fairly cool is that normally ice, it has depth to it, right? So it's not only this here, but there's also like more layers inside of the ice. So we can actually try to simulate that. Let's see what kind of textures we have in here, because I don't know what textures Sasha made for all the stuff, but I think it would be cool to just add like a random kind of noise texture for this. Let's just see what we kind of have here. What we can also do is we can show engine content. And sometimes there are actually some fairly good textures in here as well that are used by Epic for default stuff. But it can be nice to just like have a look here and see, hey, is there any like noise texture that I could use for something? So we're just gonna have a look. What's this? Too low res. Yep. This could work. I think we should try this one for now because it just has the better resolution. So just gonna go in here and add this texture. By the way, in case you didn't know this, how I did this, when you have the texture selected in Content Browser, you can hold T and click and just add texture samples that include this texture. So what I want to do now is I want to actually add some fake depth to the shader. So the way I do that is actually very, very, very simple. We're gonna look for bump offset, and we're gonna add some texture coordinates. I'm also gonna add a multiply because I wanna tweak my scaling for the textures. Let's just call this detail tiling. Set it to 1. And now what we need, we just copy the detail tiling and set the value to 0. And we put this into height and we rename it and we just name it detail depth. We plug this into the UVs here. So, and now we kind of like add these together. So first of all, we're gonna look at this. This is our base color result right now. We can enable the preview for this here. So what we will do is we will use an add node and we will just add these together and start previewing this. And now you get this. And that is because of the adding this bright texture on top of it. So what we can do is we can actually add in a multiply for this here. And I'm just going to copy that value again. And we call it detail brightness. All right. And we start with 1. We apply. So we shouldn't see any difference now. But we should be able to multiply this one down now. Why am I not getting the color? Why? Oh, my lighting build is done. Nice. I think I'm also going to just remove that switch stuff here. because yeah, we want to use the tint color. We don't need the switch necessarily. All right. So now that we have this baked, we see like, yo, we do get some stuff, but it's still very, very dark. So now, what I think is super important to understand is there are now many, many ways of improving this. Way number one would be to add even more light. However, the thing is, personally, I like to work in a way that starts out very, very close to the real behavior. And then when I basically stretch the limits of that, then I start adding, let's call it fake magic, just like adding stuff that kind of like is just, you know, tackling it from a more gamey perspective of like, yeah, okay, so now I'm going to add like a light here and then here and there. But first I really tried to stretch the possibilities of the whole rendering and baking and try to get as much out of it as I can. And one important thing is, if we would have this situation in a real world, so let's just say like, okay, so we're outside and it looks like this, right? And then you have this cave. This looks fairly realistic value-wise, right? So if I would enter this cave now in the real world, so it wouldn't stay like this because my eyes would start to adapt to this darkness. So what I believe what we actually need to do is we need to look at our exposure, because normally this would be super bright out here and our eyes would actually adapt to this dark interior. So we can either now add more lights, but I think this is the old school way of doing it. This is how we did it in Unreal 3. But now that we actually have all proper tone mapping, auto exposure and all that stuff, we should actually try to simulate the eye more. So let's do that. And let's just lower this min brightness value. And also let's try to hook up these more together. And if we do this, you can see what's happening here. You can see that we finally actually start seeing way more of this geometry here, right? So we start to actually see some of these shapes here. We can lower this one even more. Like the default for the min brightness from Epic is actually 0.03, which looks like this. So now you can see how the exposure works, right? So we look into the light and everything becomes dark. And we look into the dark and it kind of like lifts it up. And we can basically lock this with decreasing this max brightness value here. So what I would like to do for a scene like this is I would actually lock the exposure, because we don't want the exposure to change all the time. We want to have a consistent exposure inside here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to decide for something that kind of like looks the way we want. So what I would like to try now is 0.08 maybe, and 0.1. So something like this, I think, looks actually fairly good, just value-wise. You know, if we look at like our eyes have adapted to this darkness now. It might actually still be a tiny little bit too bright, so we can still tweak that and optimize that, because we will also get more light inside this cave, so our eyes will actually readjust slightly. So maybe do 0.1 and 0.13, kind of like this. It just got a tiny little bit darker. So yeah, I actually think this is pretty good because we also want to have this kind of glow from here. So let's see what this actually looks like lit. Okay. So this is what we have now in our lit state. I think this actually looks pretty good value-wise. I wonder where this specular light is coming from. Ah, I'm so happy. My reflections view mode works again. So this is actually how it's supposed to look like when you want to tweak reflections. You might remember that in some of the other videos that I did, it was weird sometimes. So, yep, that's a lot better. Okay. We also, just for the sake of doing so, we didn't up the quality of the screen space reflections to 4 again, so we're just going to do that so we have some better results. Okay. So yeah, the next things I would like to do is actually work with the other lights here. So if we turn on this light now, you can see how this looks really nice, the way the subsurface behaves here now. So one important thing to know is, like, when we bake this light, we will get baked shadows here, and some of that can potentially look a little bit weird because you have this subsurface material, and when the baked shadows get on top of it, sometimes it looks really, really bad. And so there's basically two ways of working with this. Way number one is we just deal with the fact that the baked shadows don't really look that great. Or we use a movable light that triggers the subsurface effect and casts dynamic shadows. And for the bounce light, we just add a fake light in here that kind of like gives us the bounce light from this light source, because we would only get the bounce light if we choose this light to be stationary. We also can't use static because static lights are fully baked lights. They don't have direct lighting computed in real time. And the problem is that, like, the stationary light has the direct lighting computed in real time per frame, and the indirect light is being baked. The static light, it's fully baked. Even the direct lighting gets baked into the light maps and into the indirect lighting samples. So what happens is we would not get the subsurface effect from the static light because it basically doesn't interact with the subsurface properties of this this material. So we need a semi-dynamic light, like the stationary one, or we need a movable light. So those are the two options that we kind of have here. So I would like to try it again with the stationary light first. And what we can also do to improve the shadow map of the stationary light is... Where is it? Because we can turn the stationary light into a... we can use like area shadows for that stationary light, and then it really uses the light map resolution in those shadows. Like normally stationary lights do a different kind of shadow map, which is the reason that when you have many stationary lights overlapping, you get these red X's on the lights, because it needs the certain textured channels to do these shadows that look different and often better. So that's kind of a limitation of those lights. However, we can make soft shadows with these lights as well, and then we don't run into that limitation, and it might actually look a lot better here. So let's see where that was. Light mass, use area, exactly, I already turned it on. So we can use this here, use area shadows for stationary light. And then the shadows are being baked in the same way as the static lights. And I think that should actually help us with this. So let's just quickly have a look at this here again. So we have a fairly huge radius for this light. I think I want to increase this a bit more, so we actually, you can see we kind of like hit this part here now as well. So you can see, and it's important to try this out because we have a very strong intensity on the light, and what you can see is when I increase the radius, you can see how much light we bring back here. And that means that the light was way too intense for the radius that was set. So what we can do is we just crank up the radius, and now we go down with the intensity until we kind of like hit the spots here that we actually want to hit, and then we can reduce the attenuation radius again. And that way we can kind of like make sure that intensity and radius are tweaked well. So if we just, I think we should get something like this from a light that is that strong over here. And now we can just check this out. All right. And maybe reduce it a tiny little bit. So now what we can also see is like we got some super strong emissive here. Maybe we want to tone that emissive down a little bit. To maybe something like this. Yeah, I think that works better. Okay. Cool. So I think we're actually already, so see, like this is now, it bakes way better. You can see we got so much more detail here that we can actually see, and it just works so much better. What I also want to do is I want to make sure that we cast translucent shadows here as well. Affect translucent lighting, perfect. So yeah, you might remember in the beginning this stuff here was all super dark and almost not readable, but now we can just see so much more of the materials and all that. So okay, so this one uses an IES profile with IES brightness. So this is interesting, like you can see the brightness is locked here, and that is when you add an IES profile. An IES profile has its own intensity actually baked into the profile. You can see that when you open the content browser, you can see 9,000. So basically this IES profile has a light intensity of 9,000 lumens. So what you can either do is you can either scale the IES intensity scale here to reduce the lighting intensity, because I think this is way too strong. Or what you can also do is you can say, nope, don't use the IES profile intensity, use this one up here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to use this value, I think. Let's see. So I think I'm gonna go with 1200 for this. All right. Cool. See here, this, I think this looks already very, very nice. Yep. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let's look at the lights down here as well. Maybe like this, so we actually see something. So we got like these lights down here, and they're actually pretty cool. So let's turn them on. And now we need to fix the water shader actually, because what I did was I made the water shader opaque because it was easier to see certain things. But now we will actually turn it back. And I will also fix some things with the water material that I didn't like. So I think, for example, in this scene, there were a couple of things chosen in a way that I wouldn't have done it like that. That doesn't mean that this way is like wrong or anything. I just think that the other one yields better results. So do I have this here? Yeah, I got the planar reflection. Oh. Yeah, because like I added this planar reflection, which I think is a lot nicer for doing water reflections. Okay, so now that we got this, let's look at the, whoops. Let's just look at the shader quickly. Okay, it's interesting here. So, okay. So we got translucent and we got translucent surface volume. We don't have screen space reflections enabled because we use the planar reflection. I think we don't want separate translucency. I'm just wondering now why I don't get my transparency back on the water. But yeah, sometimes, yeah, you just have to dig through it until you find the culprit. So... confused right now. It's not doing anything here. Why? Why? Huh. Well, anyways, I think we should just start the next bake in the meantime, to make sure that we get all the stuff that we want. What's also pretty cool actually is, we can do that in a second, is enable subsurface on the water material as well, because sometimes that just like makes sense, because you want to have when you have some very opaque water where you have tons of like dirt in the water itself, it's kind of like nice to have the scattering below the surface of the water actually. So this is my water plane, and we just gonna hide it for now. Oh man, I'm so stupid. I know what it was. Why do we have two waters? Do we? Oh no, those are the particles, yeah. Yes, I'm stupid. If you are in game view and you have a planar reflection, you don't get transparency. It's just like when you're not in game view, sorry. So basically the planar reflection goes over all that stuff. So you have to hit G to go into the game view, and now you can actually see it. Totally forgot about that. Stupid, stupid me. So, yeah, let's reset the color. Normally I choose something fairly dark for water, and where is my depth fade? Oh yeah, I hooked it up. So let's bring back in the depth fade here, and also let's switch to subsurface. And so now we can also see what we're actually doing here with the lights now below the water. Okay. So let's tweak those lights then. Whoops. I hate when that happens. Alright. So now we kind of like need to decide how far we actually want them to stretch. What's this? Lot stuff? Nah. Okay. So we kind of like need to place them in a way that works here. Okay. And we have 100,000. So what I would like to try is actually, I think I will use those settings. So we have 19,000 and 4,800. So let's see what happens. Could potentially be that we generate some overlap. So we have 19,000 and 4,800, I think. Okay. I think I want a little bit more. Let's do. I want some more of the highlights down here, and let's do this to 3,500. Okay. Yep. Let's try this. So now we can also actually look at the water again to see what we would get from the depth fade. So I think something like this looks fairly good. So now what we also need to do just quickly is we need to actually hook up the subsurface color. And I'm just going to add the diffuse color for it now. What's also pretty cool is like we can see here how this light also interacts with the subsurface of these tubes here. However, what we can also see is that the subsurface texture that we use for these tubes might not be the nicest. We also see that we should actually have less subsurface effect in the middle here and more on the rims, basically, of this. So we can so see, this water now looks a lot nicer with the better subsurface. So we get like this nice bluish, darkish tint inside the water here. Yep, that looks pretty nice. And we can tweak all these colors. So, but we just need to get some bake done. Alright, so yep, let's save all that stuff and get the next bake going. And while we do the next bake, I think this will be the last bake for today's session. But we will continue to just do some more shader and material tweaks for this while baking. So let's get the bake started. Okay. So I also want to look into this one here. All right. Oh wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So here we have actually the same thing again. We actually need to do this the other way around. So this one needs to go in here. And this one needs to go in here. And this one needs to go into the subsurface color. And this one we don't need it. And this one we call subsurface opacity. Okay. All right. Cool. So now we can have a quick look here. Let's do the base colors. Okay. So I would do it a little bit more like this. I think this is not too oversaturated if we compare it to this one. But we can already see here that it kind of like looks quite a bit nicer. So what we're gonna do next? We're gonna look at this again, and now we want to have a look at this stuff here. So I think we kind of want it like this, color-wise at least. And now we need to look at the thickness here. You can see, so if it's like fully opaque, almost nothing is going to come through. But now we basically allow the effect to take place kind of like this. And so you can see that we have this double effect, like this is the subsurface color and the other one is the thickness here. So I think this actually looks better already, although I think that our subsurface texture is actually a little bit too dark. So what I want to do now is I will add a lerp node. I will take the red channel and put this in here. And again, like we did with the ice, I'm gonna take the A value and I'm gonna bring it a little bit up. Whoops. Okay. I would actually like to see those with tessellation. I would really like to see that, because I know that the shader has been set up here. So and this one is not correct here. So, weld displacement, tessellation intensity. Okay, so we need to multiply this by the vertices first. So, vertex normal, zack. So then we have the intensity, this one can go away, tessellation multiplier, we put it to 8. So let's see. So this is really important, that the tessellation stuff, you just need to set it up properly so that, that it works. And you always need to multiply the stuff via to the vertex normals to make sure that everything works correctly. So now we can scroll down here and we can use tessellation. Well, let's choose P and triangles for now. It shouldn't matter too much. Too many windows. I can't drag my window out anymore. Alright. So, gonna hit save now. And let's see what happens. I think we will get a problem on these rims here because there is no separate texture for that. So I'm not sure if it might actually cause issues with those rims. Well, let's just see. I would love to... Oh, yeah. I would love to give it some more silhouette. Okay. Haha. Yo. This looks nice. Yeah. So much better. And we can really see like we get less light where it's thicker, and where it comes out it's like basically thicker, so we get less light. So I really kind of like that. Yeah, that looks sweet. I also did that quite often in the past, that I use tessellation on water as well, because it's just, yeah, it can look very, very nice. So, oh man, multiplier, I'm so stupid. Why am I adjusting the multiplier? Yeah, so I wanted to lower that just slightly. So now look at this. This looks so much better. Yep. So much better. Alright, nice. So, we were actually looking at the rocks. So I would say let's finish that up while the bake is going on here. Okay. So this is what we have right now. I'm gonna drag this one over here. And I'm going to use this one straight in, and we're gonna delete that one. So see, now it's working better because now we actually have the switch thing. I think it was not really giving us the correct preview. And of course, like, one of the most important things is like this is just a texture randomly chosen, so it has a huge impact on what sort of texture we actually use for this. So I'm not sure that this is gonna yield the results that that I want, but we'll see. So I'm gonna move this one. Just like refiguring my windows on the other screen. Okay. So now you can see we get this stuff here, right? And now the actual cool part is, and that's actually, I think we have a problem because we have a seam here. That UV layout is not very good, if I might say so, because you should always try to really make the seams only in those cavities where you don't see it. So I would actually try to UV this whole rock almost in one piece. That makes it nicer. So the cool thing that we can do now is, this is our height plane. And what we can do is we can basically push this noise texture back in the depth. So we can basically, do you see that? Like we can basically push it in. And now when we like do this, do you see that? We kind of like, it's not working that well now because of the UV layout. But what you can basically do is you can fake the depth of the material, so it feels like there is actually more in here. And what we can actually also do is we can even add this to our subsurface stuff. So we can just go in here and thank you, light mass. So we can just multiply that with the subsurface color as well to get some more additional details and more interest, especially because that stuff is moving. I've done these things quite a few times. If you go to my YouTube channel, there is actually a super old ice shader that I once made. It's not optimized at all, so it doesn't use like mask textures and stuff, or like RGB channels and that for being more efficient. It was just like prototyping the behavior. And there I basically used that. I had like cracked ice textures that were offsetted below the actual top ice texture. And you don't see it that well in the video, I'm afraid. But like those effects are really cool, and you can get like some fake depth and stuff like that fairly quickly. So yeah, it's just not that simple because we have quite some. So here you can kind of like, yeah, it's hard to describe when it's not working exactly as intended. So, but what we can do, we can detail brightness, yup. Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay, yep. I realized I hooked it up wrong. So what we need to do is we need to take this one that doesn't have the multiply for the darker stuff. So because as you saw when I made, like what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the details less visible, but what I ended up doing was I just like made the whole subsurface effect super dark. And that's not what I wanted to do. So now you can see that I kind of like get this kind of like fake depth in here. You see, now it looks a lot more like it's kind of a multi, see that here? So this is actually the effect that I want. Now this is actually starting to look really nice. So let's just, just go down with these a tiny little bit. There it is. Do you see that? This is exactly the effect that I was looking for. We can also still adjust the depth, and we can also adjust the tiling of that thing and make it more like this maybe, or make it even bigger. Yeah, I think bigger is better. Look at this. Yep. I think this is a lot nicer. Cool. Yep. And now we actually really have the feeling that there's like a proper material going on here. Sweet. So let's drag that away. So let's look at this. So this one looks actually kind of okay here. I just want to have, see that? The fake depth here now. I think this looks really, really cool. What we might want to do is we might want to adjust some of the subsurface stuff a little bit more. So that's the opacity. So what we can do is we can just add another multiply on the subsurface color, and we just add something that we call subsurface intensity. Which defaults to 1. And this is like, all that stuff is like such a back and forth, like all the time, because it's tricky. You implement something new, like a new feature that actually looks good, but then you see like you want more of certain things, and then you kind of like need to retweak here and then retweak there, and like back and forth. That's just the way it is. So now we can like amplify this effect a tiny little bit, kind of like this. Yeah, I think this works better, and we can already see it here. Okay, see that? And we might have pushed the depth a little bit too far, so we can bring it up a bit like this. Yeah, I like that. Cool. So that's actually pretty nice now. Cool. Let's have a look at our indirect lighting only stuff quickly. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Maybe we need to set some things differently here. Oh, no, I'm stupid. Yeah, that's actually good that we encounter this now. If you see this, like now it seems like the tubes are actually gone. That is because of tessellation. Like if you go to the light map view only, you don't see the stuff when you have tessellation enabled. So basically, yeah, you can't check the light maps of this anymore until you actually reduce the tessellation multiplier, or basically you just disable tessellation on the object. So when we look at this now, I actually think that we're really starting to look pretty good here. What we also need to still do is, I forgot to talk about that last time, but we have decals here. And those decals, they need the debuffer to work with static lighting. what that means is you need to do a couple of things. Sasha kind of did some things that are important for that, but I just want to show you quickly. Like what happens when you use light mass and you just use the regular deferred decals, you only get the reflection stuff to show up properly. Like you can see that this is like more reflective than the rest, for example. But the colors, they don't work properly. So what you need to do is you need to go into the project settings to make that work. And then you go to rendering. We scroll down. And then you need to enable debuffer decals. And what you also need to do is early CPass decide automatically, and movables in early CPass that needs to be turned on. If it's like none or something like that, they don't render properly. And inside the material for the decals, what you need to do is you got these blend modes here, blend mode translucent, for example, decal blend mode. And now you need to change it from translucent to debuffer translucent color normal roughness. There are different modes because then basically only one of these components is affecting the scene. So you can have a decal that only does color. It has no roughness, no normal information, and then this one is cheaper. So we need to set it to this one and hit save. And that will make the decals work the way they are supposed to work. Alright. So again, looking at this, it looks pretty good. Yep. We might want to brighten the water shader material a little bit. So now you can see what kind of influence this actually has here with the colors. But remember, we hooked up the diffuse color and the emissive to the same one. So we kind of we kind of like don't have too much freedom in having different values for both of them. So I think this one is a little bit better. Okay. Then what I also want to do is reflection. Just kind of want to make sure that some of these are a bit more accurate. I mean, of course, since we have these highly reflective materials here, and we do have screen space reflections, we also get a lot of this stuff just because of the SSR. But you can see on the left, I want to fill that stuff with some better, proper reflections. So you can see now that this just looks a lot better. Yeah. Much, much better. Cool. So I think that in the end we will actually bring back some of the emissive of the ice. There's actually many different ways of kind of like pushing the ice more. I mean, we can, for example, what we can try is actually using some fill lights here that are basically placed inside of the stuff, as you can see. So we can kind of like do things like this. Turn off shadows, make them movable. So we can, for example, we can do things like this to achieve some more effects here. Or, of course, we can also try to bring back the emissive slightly. What I would like to do, though, if we do some emissive stuff, is I would really like to use some Fresnel effects on that, so we can kind of like get some better behavior of that. All right. This is kind of like, I did like a shot before we started working on the scene. So this is kind of like what we have right now. This is what we have now. This is what we had before. So I think that we are actually in a way better spot right now than we were before. I mean, if we look at this, we don't really see the cables. It's all super dark, and we still got like tons of reflections here that we don't know. It's like the grading is really messing with the image. And now we have this, which is still far from perfect. However, we have a lot more room to do certain things now. I also think that we could potentially change the exposure a bit, since we now got so much more light in here. So we could potentially go to 0.2, 0.3, and 0.3. Nope. Let's do 0.2. So now we have a better range here. So this one looks better now. Yep. And we get all this nice stuff here. But we can also just, for now, keep it the way we had and basically do these other tweaks later on when we actually start looking at the post. Right. Okay, so one last thing before we close this session for today, just because I'm super interested on how it would look. I just really want to bring back a little bit of the emissive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add all that stuff into emissive. Do I still have some parameters for that? No, I don't. Okay. Okay. Or no, let's keep it at 0. All right. Okay, that is not the right color. Let's do this instead. Let's just see. Overall, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to quickly see if we can get a little bit of that nice glow back. There we go. Yep. So when we get stuff like this, we can actually do some fairly nice things. Like my biggest problem with the emissive stuff is like here, like it applies everywhere. So we kind of like lose our dark spots and so on. But that's something that we can have a look at later on. So again, just for reference, this is where we are right now. And we came from this. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to polish this scene up nicely and really finish it up in a cool way. So yeah, let's call it a day for now. And yeah, I hope you guys had fun, and I'm looking forward to the next session. So yeah, have a good time, take care, and see you next time. Bye bye.